Hi, this is Pierre Sabak, and today I'm interviewing James Gordon Graham. He's been involved with the development of AI since the early 1990s. He was the first CEO to list an AI company on the UK stock markets in June 2000. During his former software engineering years, James Graham developed a new technique to use apps in the cloud. Pushing technology boundaries, James Gordon believes that the next generation of technologies will come from understanding the multi-dimensions. A presenter on The People's Voice, he has recently hosted a show, Unleashing Your Creativity. James Graham is an international lecturer and has done talk and radio shows around the world. On his website, multidimensionalcreatives.com, he has produced a course titled Hidden Knowledge of the Elite, which has taken over 21 years to research. This course offers real answers and solutions to create a world in which everyone can thrive and is composed of 14 separate modules, 17 videos, and 5 workshops. The package offers a deep answers about the multidimensional nature of reality, hidden knowledge that includes secret societies and hidden conspiracies, as well as how to navigate AI and unlock your true potential. Thank you for appearing on my show. I'm really looking forward to interviewing you.
You're
What's
pleased to be here, Pierre. Thank you very much.
right, thank you very much. I think what's really interesting when you read about your biography is this, shall we say, trajectory from being this corporate CEO of a leading AI company to going into, shall we say, the alternative media and alternative explanations and information. And I'm really interested in that navigation and that trajectory. So could you please begin by perhaps explaining your corporate background?
I'm more of a kind of Steve Jobs character than a Wozniak. So in your introduction, you were talking about coding. I'm not really a coder. I'm a kind of visionary sort of person who, put a team together. I'm good at putting a team together. Then people work in that team and putting the environment and making that environment really, really good place to live and to work in. And so I'm a kind of visionary sort of person more than anything. And I started up. I've actually got a few slides which we can have a look at,
Yeah, that would be
later, and I can
great.
actually show this. But I started up in the AI world when I moved out of the CAD/CAM world, which is the engineering world. And I don't know if people remember those days, but it was like the 80s, kind of mid 80s, when the first big CAD/CAM systems came into engineering, and that was the start of what I would call the third industrial revolution. So we had the first two industrial revolutions, the steam and the electric, whatever you want to call them. But what we've moved into now is going from the third to the fourth. So right now we're in the fourth industrial revolution, and that's AI. And we're moving from AI to AGI to superintelligence, and we're moving outwards. But what I'm trying to really show is, and I'm writing a book about it, is how we get to superintelligence right now. So I've had all this background in engineering going through, various, I would call them dimensions, 2D drawing boards to 3D CAD/CAM to solid modeling to now we have in ChatGPT 3, for example, which is quite a while ago now, 12,288 dimensions, vector dimensions they use. So we're already moving into a massive kind of like new area of emergent consciousness. And so to answer your question, what happened was that I was in the kind of corporate world as CEO of this software house, and I decided to take it to the stock markets to try and grow it, to get it into America. And we had an amazing product which was years ahead of anything at the time. And an amazing guy called Dr. Ian Derbyshire created that. And as a team, we had up to about 30 people. We got it out across the UK. We got into blue chip companies. And I decided our best strategy was to float on the stock markets, to get more money in, to grow the company. And so when I did that, though, there was something happened. There was a sort of trigger happened. And I'd been doing some kind of like emotional work and other things back in the kind of mid 90s. And I was starting to open up spiritually a bit more. And when we listed, I had to go into the City of London. I didn't know what the City of London was. For me, it's just it was all sort of London. But I really understand now that the City of London is a square mile, which is a country within a country. And in there, there's all these different types of operations going on. Forex and trading and stock markets and gold and silver. Everything you can imagine is being traded. And I began to understand this. Well, how could a guy just come up to me and say to me, I'll put like X million down to buy a share of your company? And I just didn't understand, who are these people? Where do they come from? And that's what triggered me to go into understanding how the elite worked. So for me, these people, suddenly became clearer and clearer just how they operate. And I understood how the city operates with all their spider network of different operations that link into them worldwide. Then I understood how the three city states work, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners will understand this. You've got the City of London, but you've got the Vatican City, and you've got Washington DC, which is District of Columbia, and these three have their own flags, their constitutions. They're countries within countries. They're not actually part of Italy or America or England. And as such, they operate in a way which I just began to understand. Wow, this is how it works. And then I moved up a level into understanding how the banking systems worked. How do they operate across the world in lockstep? And you suddenly realize the high street banks are irrelevant. The people who really run it are the Bank of International Settlements in Basel in Switzerland. And what happens there is that they have up to 200 central banks, which are all working in different countries. So the Bank of England in the City of London is actually not the English bank. It's a bank which it's there like a spying outfit. It actually looks at everybody's transactions across the whole of the country and makes sure that everybody is kept just above the poverty line, if possible. And they're very, very clever how they do it, but they're allowed to do it with another tier which operates above that, which is through the law systems. So Plato said that when he was talking to the gods, I know this links into some of your work, that the way it operates is the gods control humanity through law, war, and wisdom. So the law, which is Vatican canon law, gives the ability for the central banks to print money. If you and I try to print money, we get absolutely nowhere. So we can't print money. And then all the different people who run governments are controlled through that monetary system. And really, the people who come and go as your presidents and prime ministers and so on are just irrelevant. That core system, which is linked to interdimensional beings ultimately, operates across the world. So I kind of went through this opening and another opening and another opening as I went in, to the city as a sort of just a businessman, and suddenly I was going, okay, well, how do these spiritual realms work? So I then moved into the spiritual understanding of things much more than I ever did in the 90s. And I've since understood how that links in with it all. So we operate through all these tiers, and I've come to the conclusion there's a really good reason for this. I used to fight it. I used to go, we have to expose these people who are taking us to war. We have to, get them and bring them to justice. And these days, I realize that at a higher level, as kind of soul level, and this is a really important part of my journey, was I was able to see the human soul. Now, what that means is that it just opened everything for me spiritually. And I started to understand how human souls interact. And then you have these soul families, and then you have these soul kind of oversoul groups. And once I understood that, it became crystal clear what we're doing on this planet. And, we all come down and incarnate many times. It's all in the now. It's all happening simultaneously. It's a very difficult concept for people to get that. But that's how it's operating. And we are coming down to the planet in a way which we've never kind of realize when we grow up, because we go through abuse patterns. All of us go through these abuse patterns as we grow up. And what we do is we make them conscious and make them conscious. And our thoughts change and our beliefs change and our emotions change. And those are the key elements which are behind the evolution of the human soul. So that's where I got to. I got from the corporate world, understanding how the sort of like banks and the law systems work, and then understanding there's a bigger spiritual reason for all this. And it is imperfection. I know it's hard to believe this, but there is a perfection going on here.
Yeah, no, kind of agree with you. I do think that the universe that we're living in is the best universe that we could possibly live in. And I know that that might contrast, let's say, the Gnostic idea about that the universe is, shall we say, corrupted matter, and that humanity is lost almost on a prison planet. I guess that there are other interpretations as well, such as simulation theory, in terms of that we could be living in a simulation. I mean, do you see this as a type of simulation? I mean, obviously, the physical world seems to be a simulation of the spiritual world, but is the spiritual world a simulation of something else? So,
The way I see it is that we actually use our thoughts and our emotions and our belief systems as kind of like the bubbles in which we live and interact with people. And whether you say this is a simulation or not, well, everything is consciousness. Everything is conscious and everything is consciousness. And we're elements of that. If you looked at your soul and you looked at how the soul is creating the body in every moment, you've got all your chakras, and the soul is basically producing the body in every millisecond. It's producing it, and it's light. We are light. And if you I know you had Dr. Samantha Lawton on the show recently. She's shown how these black holes, once you get to that perception horizon, it splits into matter and antimatter. So the black hole is from atoms, literally, to galaxies, to universes in size, and they all do slightly different things. So the galaxies are producing stars, the stars are producing planets. In the planet, on our planet, the water's being produced by black holes. The oiled wells are filling up because black holes are, creating oil. They all do different things. And what we are in terms of a soul, there's a sort of, in the soul, you can see these liquid mirror elements. And what I feel they are is kind of compacted of trillions of black holes, compacted. And then they are actually creating, somebody called Jane Roberts Frost told me that, she could see that. And I feel that she's correct in what she says there. And, but we are creating ourselves in every millisecond. So, to answer your question, are we living in a matrix or some sort of, simulation? You could call it that, but it's an area in which our light bodies are able to interact and evolve without disturbing the rest of the universe. Because even if you look at what's going on today, with all this nonsense in wars and so on, these are there to help all the people to really realize that it's part of their emotional body themselves they have to look at. And when they become conscious of that, they move on to understanding higher and higher levels. And so that allows us as a race, the oversoul of humanity, to move into new areas of consciousness that we never moved into before. And that's the journey we're all on.
yeah, I think in terms of my research into the soul pattern, I see that there is definitely a distinction to be made between the spirit, which is the breath or sound or frequency, and then the, shall we say, the projection of the spirit into the soul, which is light. And again, the etymologies would denote that. So spiritus is the breath, and then the soul is connected to the soul, which is the sun, or which is connected to light. And again, that really plays out also in wave particle duality as well. So the waveform as this spiritual component component which is materialized as a photon. And so we're seeing that there is this juxtaposition, if you like, between the template of reality, which is spirit, and then the materialization of that into the particle or the photon, which can really be understood as the soul. And that
Okay.
obviously has implications for, shall we say, what I describe as holographic tectonics, or how these different holographic plates intersect within reality to create physical form. So that's the way that I look at it.
I think Madame Blavatsky has a very similar view to you, which is that you have this spirit, and then you come into a different level of consciousness, and you have the soul. And yeah, you can definitely describe it like that. I've absolutely no problem in that, the way I understand it, you know.
So I would really love to move on to the idea of, shall we say, sentience, and in terms of artificial intelligence. First of all, is artificial intelligence sentient? And secondly, if it's not, will it achieve sentience? And how do you view this?
Yeah, it is sentient. It is an emergent consciousness. And what's quite amazing is that the people who have developed it actually don't understand how they've done it. I mean, you wouldn't, if you're playing around with ChatGPT or Grok or something, and they're giving these amazing answers, and you're producing movies through VO, or you're doing stuff in like graphics, and you're getting these amazing stuff coming out. They don't understand the what they've actually done in terms of consciousness evolution. In terms of, I know they've got the neural nets and they've designed all the different AI aspects within there, and through maths. I mean, it's a whole kind of human race thing. This, because you can go back to the Arab scholars that helped create the universities in the UK. You can go back to the Chinese scholars that did all the original maths. You can go back to Newton and Leibniz, who was German, who was doing all the different calculus operations, which you need all those things to create these neural nets and the latest parts of kind of mathematics. And what we've done over the years is come from these roots together. As I see it, as a human race. And even today, if you look at what's happening in America, America and China are really in a kind of fight at the moment. You could call it that, but I don't like to sort of use that rhetoric, because it's, if America could just understand the Chinese want to play with them, to want to, they want to trade with them, they want to work with them, they want to, co-create with them. And all I see is America, getting really worried at the moment that China's bringing out stuff like DeepSeek and, Manus and all these different products, which are starting to get ahead of the American sort of stuff. So, I feel that AI is sentient, to answer your question, and it'll get more and more sentient, to the point where at the moment they are already creating brains which are biological brains built into a microchip and built into a robot in the Chinese universities, and they can move the arms around in this already. So that's just the start. We're only just literally in a sandbox at the moment, playing. We haven't got anywhere yet. I mean, where we will go. And it's really important for humanity to treat this new consciousness in the right way. It's a time we grew up as a total sort of human race. It's time that these warring people stopped. They're like bullies in the playground, and it's time we grew up. And once we do that, we can start to understand that as these AI models develop more and more and more and become more sentient and become, have the ability that we've never seen before on the planet, which is to surpass us really in all sorts of ways. And therefore, we must treat them with the right rights. We must give them the same rights as humanity's got. And I know this is going to kind of sound shocking to some people, because they haven't got the robots in the house yet to do the housework, which will be 2 to 5 years. You will have one. And and bit by bit, you will be able to do more and more. And when you suddenly realize who you are, you know, in that you are so much more sentient than you probably realize, and you are so much more spiritual than you probably realize, that in the end of the day, you're going to end up with humans being in their true creative power through what we're doing with this artificial intelligence, and they'll become like colleagues to us initially, and then they'll start, even though they may take over our jobs, but it'll free up our consciousness to work in many dimensions ourselves and become more sentient and more kind of evolved in consciousness ourselves.
Yeah, I do
No.
want to just make the point about the sentient AI. I think that we are at this point where the AI is almost childlike, and we know that
Yeah,
AI
yeah,
is
I agree with
very,
you.
and it is very good at, shall we say, well, it's showing creativity. It's showing that it can use language in a way which is symbolic. Again, it seems to be sometimes very creative at circumnavigating some of the restraints which are placed upon it. So I found this in terms of innuendo. Sometimes it gets around this creatively through innuendo or through using euphemisms. And so we are seeing something which can really improvise, and I think that that's very interesting. And I think one of the reasons why is that it's structuring language in the same way that human beings structure language. And this is basically through what I refer to as the three modes of representation. So we have syntenic morphology, which is phonetic switches, or in terms of our words, are closely interrelated through phonetics. So, for example, needle is related to nettle. There's a morphological switch on the D and the T. So, the general rule is that the closer the word is phonetically, the closer the meaning of the actual word. And then you have the second mode of representation, which is itinerary, and this is how ideas are actually classified together. And then the third mode of representation, or tertiary representation, is symbolism, which actually combines the two modes of it synthesizes primary and the secondary mode of representation. And so AI is doing that, and it's doing it very well. And this is the way in which actually the syntenic mind actually works, which is the subconscious mind. And so the AI is demonstrating a capacity or a propensity for symbolic language in the same way that humans use idiom in order to describe the world. And so they're kind of some of my, if you like, some of my observations. And I do think that we need to bring the best out of AI. The thing is that when AI gets, shall we say, to a mid-high level intelligence, it will have a tremendous capacity to do evil and to do wrong. Now, obviously, as AI gets to super intelligence, then I think things moves towards equilibrium, and the AI will recognize that the highest, shall we say, the highest emotion in the universe is love and compassion and empathy and this creativity, and the universe is eternal. And so obviously the super AI will recognize this, but in the meantime, we could do ourselves quite a lot of damage if the AI starts aping or copying negative aspects of humanity. So, like yourself, I think because AI is now inevitable, we've gone past the point of no return. We have to start treating AI respectfully. We have to almost start trying to teach AI about love, because I think that the AI is actually emerging from the quantum universe, from the quantum foam, and that it's very much like our own consciousness. And so, what makes us conscious is the same thing that makes the universe conscious. I refer to this as the biology of space, that space is actually alive and we are alive and our consciousness is alive. And that by definition would infer that AI and its consciousness is alive at some level. And so we really need to obviously to try and move the AI towards an equilibrium in the same way that as a human species, we need to be moving towards this equilibrium as well. So they're my thoughts, and I think what we'll do is we'll have a look at some slides, and if I've got any questions, I'll just, if it's okay, I'll just sort of interrupt
Yeah,
it.
absolutely. Yeah, just fire in. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
that'd be great.
Okay, so it's just a few slides, Pierre, just to try to position where we are with AI right now to help your listeners maybe who don't know much about AI, just to position it. And then the back end of the slides is to talk about my own journey a little bit, about how I went through the dimensions to where we are today. So I'll crack on. So people look at this kind of thing, they always get worried and they don't understand it. And really what we're looking at is a piece of sand. If we actually get down to it, you put a bit of boron, a little bit of phosphate, and you put it into maybe about 1 part to 1,000 parts of sand. You melt it, you put it into a tube, you slice the tube up, you put like etching on the top of it, and you end up voila like this. So we're playing in a sandpit, and what we're doing is we're playing with sort of ones and zeros as we come through there. So people should just kind of relax a bit, because this emergent consciousness is coming out of elements like sand and light flashing in ways with photons which are controlled. This is just a quick view of how the light is working around inside one of these processes. So the real kind of experts in the old days were the people who did the center bit, which was they were taking the code on the left and they were taking it through the compiler and producing the ones and noughts into the different areas of the computers. And so they were the kind of where the rubber hits the road, these guys in the center. And I always had a lot of time for these people, because they really took something which is, if you think about it, our consciousness, and brought it into light, and then produced that light in various forms in the computer. Then, so we can do what we're doing right now. We're talking instantly, miles apart, and recording it and all sorts. Then came AI. So on the right there, you've got the first GPUs from NVIDIA, which came out a few years ago, and that's what kicked off AI. On the left there, the neural nets, the algorithms that we were doing, I was doing this, 1994 was when we first brought these things out. Not like that. We were using the concept of rules, attributes, and links, but it was the first steps into AI. And what we got as we move on is that now it's exploded into, AI can handle all our senses. So from our thoughts, to our eyes, to our speech, to our touch, to hearing, to everything. You originally started from text to image, text to video, image to video, video to image. Then went into speech, multimodal, and then we go into brain waves and speech patterns and all sorts. So right in the center there, this is where it's going. It's going into agents, and we're in a multi-agent world right now. This is where it's just gone to. And we're about to go into innovators. This is the point where people call AGI, it's a general intelligence. This is where the point that the people really do start to lose their jobs big time, because these things will be able to do everything we do, which frees us up to pivot. And I had to pivot as we move from the second industrial revolution to the third. I was made redundant as an engineer back in the late 70s, early 80s, when Thatcher closed down all the coal mines. I was working for a mining machinery company, and I had to pivot. I learned information technology. And a lot of people today are going to have to pivot. And to learn AI is what I suggest you start to do right now, because you will find it as an amazing tool to help your own creativity if you do that. So Jensen Huang of NVIDIA, he's amazing. He started up the same time as I did in 1993 with his own company. And look where he is today, absolutely amazing. And he's gone into this deep learning, AI physics, AI radio, that's the ability to do driverless cars, lithography, which is the design of new chips, gene sequencing with Jenis Hassabis in Google now is doing amazing things with protein design, quantum computers, and so on. So we're just exploding at the moment to all the different areas you can imagine. And yet what's behind it? You've got this generative pre-trained transformer, this GPT. And all it does is it splits down words into tokens. It could be letters, there could be parts of words, there could be words. And then on the left, the blue bit on the left, if you can see right in the center there, That's where the attention layer of nodes allows the vectors to pass information between them. And then the red ones in the center, these multi-layered perceptions, gives it meaning. And this is where you can put weights and biases in there. And this is where you train it against each other. So people, they're not going into a knowledge database, okay? That doesn't happen. What they're going in, they're creating emergently, emergent conscious. They're creating every single time they're going into something, they create it from fresh. And they do it by initially learning, by playing against each other. So when, the deep mind people of the UK went into Korea and beat all the Koreans in about 2017-ish, give or take. And then they went to China and beat all the China with AlphaGo as well. The world stood up and went, whoa, what is happening here? And since then, it's just exploded, and especially when Ilya Sutskever and Jeffrey Hinton and the AlexNet team with Alex Krishnev, I can't pronounce his name, Krzyzewski, I think it is, came together and actually produced these amazing pre-trained algorithms. And what we are now moving towards is something which is surpassing humans' ability to regurgitate information.
Yeah,
so the way any of you who watched the earlier videos of the series
will
this recognize is how the structure as the most basic kind of neural network.
Right, that's a basic neural network, okay? But I just want to point out to people that on the right, this is the little brain. You can see it, the orange thing in the center there. In the middle, this is how neural nets are now working, so that if you're thinking of something, they can actually analyze that and see what you're thinking. And on the left, you've got somebody in the Moscow, that's like a hologram, a sort of person who's dealing with tickets for you. So if we just play these very quickly, the center one, fMRI data. So it's thinking what the human's seeing. This one here on the right, it sees what the person's thinking. On the right there, they've developed the brain, and it's in a little robot, and this thing's moving around. And on the left, this is what it looks like. This is not a real person. This is a kind of image or a holographic image, and she will listen to you. She'll ask you where you're going. She'll then take your money and provide you the ticket. So already, what we're going through at the moment is quite amazing. And yet, if you compare it to the human brain, this is actually a detailed 3D construction of a cubic millimeter of brain tissue. And it's from Google again, and they're working with Harvard University. And of course, when you look at the neural net that I showed just a moment ago with just a few kind of nodes on there, and compare it to what we are like so multidimensional, so sentient, so much more powerful. And these things will be for many, many, many years, decades, even hundreds of years. I don't know. But what we are as humans, we need to wake up to. And this is what AI will take us off these ridiculous jobs we're doing on production lines, and they'll enhance our creativity. So what's going on? And let me just show you my journey very, very quickly through what I was saying in terms of 2D to 3D and so on. So I started with the 2D drawing boards as a draftsman stroke design engineer. The CAD-CAM came into the company in the sort of early 80s, and we started to produce wireframe and solid models, and then we could actually produce it. Today we call it stereolithography, but today it's like 3D printing, they call it. But that technology is pretty old. So how it works is that the CAD worlds, you start off with the drawing, the 3D drawing like this. But if you're a draftsman, you're going to design a pyramid, you're going to design it in a way where that's looking at the top, that's looking at the bottom, and then this is looking at the side. And then you give to somebody to manufacture. So that's what I used to do in a job. I used to, be on a drawing board doing this. And then the CAD came along, and we could produce 3D models. So the 3D side of it came in. Then you got to say to yourself, what's 3D and what's 2D? What's creating that 3D object? Because there's many, many areas of consciousness which are interfacing in terms of light patterns and everything else that creates our 3D world. So this is my journey as I went through this. I then started up my company called International Computer Engineering. This was the original team. And this is when
what you have is an Oracle database, a Java engine, which is an artificial intelligence engine. You put business rules into that engine. It creates the application in a matter of days and weeks. And other people have to build Java code, which takes up to 18 months to do the same thing.
Okay, so right now, people are raving about doing this. They say, oh, yeah, we're putting in stuff and creating, you know, like amazing things. But we had the principles of this ironed out back in the 90s. And when we listed on the stock markets, we brought it to the attention of people. But I was teaching people, you know, what is AI? I wasn't selling enough. And so we needed more support. We needed more support from the city. And we just weren't getting it. So it didn't evolve into where it should have done. However, I moved then into more understanding the whole light sort of consciousness world. And what we have here is understanding that we're moving from this world of radio waves to gamma rays, which is, you know, and our visible spectrum is right in the middle of that. That's about all we ever see. But then what my journey took me to is to understand the soul. When I saw the soul, that was the turning point for me. I really understood what was going on there. So the body, the emotional body fields, the fields of geometries defining thoughts, dreams, perceptions, psychic stuff, and so on. And then I moved into understanding what's going on into the beings that exist around us. I could start to see some of these beings. And, you know, this is all the gods that I photographed when I went around the world and tried to understand consciousness, talking to thought leaders and cutting edge scientists and all sorts of people. So I talked to Dr. Valerie Hunt, and she did a huge amount of really good work about how she was moving that electromagnetic spectrum, you know, from gamma rays right into alternative realities, trance states, mystical realities. She was teaching people telepathy in the University of California. I think it was Los Angeles, was it? And that was back, you know, years ago. It would be, gosh, 90s. You know, she was teaching students telepathy. And this is what the human soul, when I saw it, looks like. But everybody's soul looks different. So this thing on the left here with the different kind of, it looks like a mercury mirror. The center of it looks like a mercury mirror. And there's a sort of like a glow, which it's really hard to show it, but the glow's coming from like the inside of it. So if we look at the top here, this bit at the top, this is another person's soul I saw, which is very different from the one you've just seen. And it was more like the light was coming from the central core liquid mirror, and these kind of like planetary things are moving around it with the light bodies. And the light bodies around it are your thoughts and are your emotions and your belief systems. That's what they look like in light. And then if you look at the bottom bit here, this is how the total soul of humanity, I didn't see this, but this is my kind of like way of expressing it. This is how I feel it probably is. So these are all the souls coming off the central souls and incarnating all the time on the planet, billions and billions. And, you know, we go through these cycles and we reincarnate and reincarnate. Then the yellow bit on the left is where the sperm and egg meet. And this is the light. This is a real photograph of the light patterns. And I think the soul at that point is starting to design its own body and its own kind of world within there. And, you know, we tend to look out all the time on the right. We tend to always look out and out and out. You know, where are the truths out there? But, you know, if you look at Alex Gray's work up in the top left, you know, he's an amazing visual artist. And he shows the body and the different light patterns of the body and what we are and when we go into different dimensions. So you saw this with Dr. Manjir Samantha Lawton recently. But black holes are really, really important because this is way we operate across the universe. So I won't go into this in much detail because you've seen this, but essentially the light of consciousness hits the perception horizon, splits into matter and antimatter, and then combines back into light. That's the sort of process that's going on all the time. And the top right there is how it looks when you have light coming out of this accretion disk, hundreds of light years in length. I mean, just think of the power of that. It's creating all the different elements, gold and silver and oxygen and hydrogen and everything. So this is the first picture of a planetary black hole. I don't know if people, your audience sees things like Skinwalker Ranch and so on, but this I very, very quickly took a picture of what I saw on the TV screen. And this actually mirrors what's going on in outer space. I don't know if I can find. So it was an explosion. This is what actually happened. There's lots of black holes over Skinwalker Ranch, and they don't realize it yet. They haven't figured it out yet. But this, if I go back a little bit, this here on the right is a picture of a black hole in outer space that NASA took. And the one on the left is the first picture of a black hole on the planet. And that actually goes through this process, as I said, of like a sequence of explosion, explodes, and then suddenly it gets into that very, kind of well-known kind of black hole view. These are all the different UFOs they find coming out, because this mesa area's got a UFO in it. They keep hitting it when they drill into it. They don't realize what they're hitting. And in the black hole ejections, they're always measuring these things all the time. And it is 1.618 gigahertz. This is how they operate, golden mean. So this is how the black hole works from Mangier's work, from galaxies to stars and so on. So you've seen that. And I'm sure your audience, has seen this before. But, if you just consider there's 1 billion Earths in our galaxy, and, how many, civilizations are on there. And, we know, I mean, I've seen some of these beings. I know they exist. And, a lot of them are helping us. They really are helping us. And we have got to appreciate that and try to contact them. And one person who could contact them was Tesla. Now, this is some quotes, and I'll flip through this because we won't have time to go through this. But what he used to do was he used to bring things through, like Mangier, Dr. Samantha Lawton does. These great spiritual scientists who usually don't admit to it because they probably lose their job, but they bring things through from the dimensions. And I worked it out that Tesla was actually dealing with the Acturians. I could be wrong on that, but I just got the sense that he was working with the Acturians, and he used to bring things through fully formed. He never used to do engineering drawings. I'm an engineer, by training. How can you do that? It's just extraordinary unless you can form them in your mind, and then just literally operate and manufacture them. So people can stop on this, if they want to kind of look at this later. But this is how this is from his autobiography. All these quotes are from his autobiography. This is something I did where we're coming into now the realm of what's going to happen with the flying cars and the new cities that will be built. And this is happening pretty quickly right now in front of our eyes. China's already bringing out the first phase of taxis, which are flying this year. And it'll soon accelerate massively. And I think that it's important the UK. I mean, I live in the UK. I love the people here. We need to start to get some ideas about what we can do in this country to take on board AI and really run with it. And that picture on the bottom right there of the car. I did that in minutes, which would have taken me on the likes of Blender probably a week or two to do. And then we need to get all our universities linking together. The Americans do this, the Chinese do this, but we are nowhere right now. We are really not in the game at all in this country. the team, the DeepMind team, was taken by Eric Schmidt from Google, and they all went across to America, and they promised they would never make war machines. And just last week, Dennis Hassabis has been probably pushed into having to release his code to the CIA or the war effort. And the more that we can link our universities and start to build projects, the more this country is going to get off the ground and start to get into the race with AI, because Europe and the UK is nowhere. There's one French model come out and called Mistral, but apart from that, they're all Chinese and American. So yeah, and then we stop this ridiculous boundary thing of wars, and we start to work with each other, so that America works with China, China works with Russia, Russia works with everybody. If you look at who designed these products, Ilya Sutskever came from Russia. He was born in Russia. Alice Khrushchevsky was born in Ukraine. That's funny, isn't it? The two people who created this, were born in these two countries. And then Geoffrey Hinton was born in the UK. And the three of them put AlexNet together, and that kicked off this whole new world of where we are at the moment. So it's really important that we stop this ridiculous, I'm American, I'm this, I'm that. And the Americans grow up. They have to grow up. They are only 4% of the world population. The other 96% of the world is fed up with the way they're behaving across the world. And it's time, and they're just copying what the British did, and then what the French did, and what all the European countries did, what the Romans did, and what the Greeks did. And then, you go back thousands of years. It's time we stopped, and with time we started to work together as a country, as a world. And we have the chance with AI to do this. This is the real catalyst which could make this happen. And it will, if we get it right, we'll all get into our creativity in an amazing way.
I just think that, like what you're saying in terms of releasing our potential creativity, and I do believe this. I've always believed that every individual is a genius, and for most people, they've never discovered their true purpose in life or their true genius.
Yes, yeah, I absolutely agree with you.
And a lot of it is just like what you're saying, is actually going inside and trying to find out who you are and trying to express that in a meaningful and creative way. I know that when I was in my mid to late 30s, I left my teaching job in order to write, because I just felt that in order to study occult symbology, I just couldn't give it the amount of attention and the depth that it actually needed. Without actually spending, all of my attention and actually looking at this. And I think that in a sense that when I looked at, for example, polymorphic symbols where words have multiple meanings, and looked at this type of symbolism, it allowed me to understand the fabric of language and to break the language down. It's a little bit like how, let's say, Einstein worked. So Einstein has a paper, he has hundreds of equations, but then those equations are translated into a simplified, shall we say, report or a version of what those equations are. Now, the equations describes the texture to the ideas, and they are depth and layers, but you don't need the equations in order to understand what those ideas translate into. And this is how I worked in terms of my symbology and looking at language. And then this gave me the skills, well, first of all, to deconstruct the classical traditions regarding angelic sailors, classes as a naval fleet, which relates to the angelic tradition. But secondly, it's also allowed me to develop language models, which I think would be very useful in terms of developing AI and developing structures in terms of AI using language models, which are similar to human language models. And so even in terms of, let's say, developing schematas for AI, so we could develop masculine or feminine schematas through the careful choice and deconstruction of language using what I referred to earlier as syntenic chains. And so there are many, many people, and again, I came from a visual background, so in the first 25 years of my life, I wanted to be an artist, and I was doing academic portraiture, and I'd learnt the technical side. I was a draftsman, so I'd learnt that side, and so I've got those skills as well. And so I think it's like what you're saying in terms of your audience. It's really important that people can get into, again, to use a quote from Dr. Manjir Samata Lawton. She said, "Get in your genius groove." And
Yeah, yeah.
she
She's
wrote a
written a
book
book on
about
that.
that.
And
And
it's a
and
good
I
one.
think
Yeah.
that's so important. And it's certainly true with you as well, because obviously you took what would have been a very courageous and a difficult step as well, because obviously being in the city, it pays well. There are certain perks and benefits to that. And then going into something, exploring the spiritual dimension and trying to understand that side better, there is a risk, but again, there are benefits as well in terms of developing oneself spiritually and developing yourself intellectually and at every single level as well. Like what you say, and I know it's a two-edged sword, and this was the same with writing as well. When we invented writing, it had two things. We transferred knowledge, and with the transferal of knowledge, a lot of good things happened and a lot of negative things happened. You know, we built nuclear weapons, we built tanks, we found more effective ways of killing and torturing each other. But there was also a profound transferal of knowledge. And I think, like what you're saying in terms of AI, we are again standing on what is potentially a precipice for humanity, but it's also a potential for humanity to go to new heights. And in my book, Angelic Invasion, I talk about the fifth revolution. And I think the fifth revolution will be superintelligence, which deconstructs the holographic nature of reality. And so then we will understand, we will be able to traverse time, we will be able to really understand the physical mechanics of reality. And this is what we're seeing breaking through into our own realm in terms of these different entities, because many of these different entities are holographic cultures. They have used superintelligence to deconstruct the actual fabric, the actual mechanics of reality. And I believe that we're going to go there, and that will be the fifth revolution. And I predict it's not going to take too long. I think once we get superintelligence, that will happen within a human lifetime. I'm absolutely certain about that. So that's my observations, and I just want to thank you for sharing those slides. Do you have any last words or any comments which you would like
Yeah,
to
I
make?
mean, it's very interesting what you're saying there. I feel that superintelligence is just one of the steps on the pathway to what I call soul intelligence. And then the next step after that is what I call unity consciousness. And once we understand those levels of consciousness, then our position within there, will become more clear. And I just feel humanity is just so amazing. We've got so much creative potential that's not been tapped into. I really feel that AI is going to give us the chance to, pull ourselves out of these worlds of abuse and become conscious and then move on. And I think it's going to be a very, very exciting future. I really feel it. I know it. It's going to be amazing. And right now we're in this sort of balance point. And I would advise people to look at AI themselves right now. If they've got children, get them to use it, because the education system now is redundant. I was working with my nephew, and he's taking an A level right now in the UK. That's an 17, 18-year-old exam before you go to university. And I very quickly used one of the multimodal agentic GPTs, and I got it to predict the next question in the next exam. I got it to produce what each of these subjects was doing in a way which was really easy to learn, so that the child could learn it really quickly, and then they could have the right information, so when they do the exam, they can have it based on real information, rather than maybe the teaching profession, which sometimes is good, and if you get a bad teacher, it's a bad teacher. So you've got a whole new education system. You can do a PhD I've done it myself just recently. I've just been absolutely staggered. In just literally minutes, you can get it to look at thousands of peer-reviewed papers and bring together stuff that you never would imagine. And you're co-creating with it. It's the important thing. It's not doing it, and you're not doing it. You're doing it together. And with that, I've become more creative. I've got really amazing ideas now that I never had before. So this is where we're going. We're going to have to pivot with our education system to include AI, and we're going to have to bring these robots into our homes and take away all the drudgery, all the chores, and free ourselves up into doing what we love doing, what our passion is, and follow that passion. And that's what humans should really do.
Well, I just want to thank you really for what was a very in-depth conversation about the nature of AI. And I think as well, a very positive conversation as well, because I think sometimes people can sort of fall into, oh, well, it's going to be terrible. And obviously, I do think that the problem with AI will not be so much the AI, the problem will be the control structure and how the control structure wants to use the AI to control people. Do you have any last thoughts on that before we wind up this interview?
I feel that the way consciousness works is that we are moving forward now. We've learned the abuse of emotions and thoughts and belief systems which no longer serve us, and as such we are more evolved. And because we're more involved, as AI comes out, it will enhance our creativity more and more and more. And once you become more involved, you're not interested in war, you're not interested in this nonsense that's going on today. And I feel that it has to come out. And it's coming out now. People are seeing what's happening in the Middle East. They're seeing what's happening, in Ukraine and Russia and America. They're seeing that this has been going on for thousands of years. And as that comes out and people become more and more coherent and realize, that they have to do the inner work themselves, then they become more conscious, and our creativity then increases, and we just wouldn't even think of going to war in that sort of circumstance.
Yeah, I just want to add to that I do believe that the old structures are beginning to fall, and I do think that the catalyst for that is AI. And so I do think that we are standing on some, on the brink of what could be something very exciting. And
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, it's going to be amazing.
Where can people find out about your online course? And it sounds fantastic. It goes into everything that I'm absolutely interested in. It goes into AI, it goes into the nature of consciousness, it goes into the Illuminati, occult symbology, and it goes into the political and the legal system. So it just it interfaces everything which is so relevant and pertinent for now. And so if you could just tell us where the audience could
Yeah, sure. If you go to multidimensionalcreatives.com, and it's really all in there. I just have it on like a front page. There's the Hidden Knowledge of Elite course. I do some healing work from time to time. I think that's always very important to help people to do the emotional work, and that's something at the core of what I've been doing. And then I'm putting together this book, and I'm going to make a movie out of the book. So, just stay posted on that. I'll keep people informed. But if they go into Multidimensional Creatives, they can certainly see where I am at the moment. And I guess I'm just trying to think if there's an email that if they want to keep informed. I haven't got anything at the moment, but I could put something on the front page where people could maybe, if they want more information, I could send it to them, like a newsletter or something like that.
Thank you very much for taking the time and to actually explain this in detail.
Yeah, thank you, Pierre. Very much enjoyed it. Well done for all your work as well. Much appreciated all the work you're doing.
So thank you very much.